Okay, well, with the interest of time and recognizing this meeting is going to be recorded and posted on our website, I think we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation this afternoon. After this call is complete, we will send around this PowerPoint, as well as Connie's going to be dropping a bunch of links into the chat box. We'll also send those out in an email as well. And we'll be doing some quick tutorials of where things are on our website. So if you don't have your screen open currently to see what's going on the web portion, I highly encourage you to do that at this time. But if you need to drop out of the meeting for any reason, again, it is going to be recorded. So welcome everybody. This is Gretchen Wall, the coordinator of the Produce Safety Alliance. Thanks for attending this meeting on such short notice. Things have been changing very rapidly, as you know, with the coronavirus outbreak. And we have been trying to adjust some of our policies to make trainings more accessible to growers and educators across the country and internationally. So in this webinar, originally we had scheduled Hans Estrin from University of Vermont to be giving a presentation today on Module 7, but given the importance of this topic, we felt that it was critical that we slide Hans out of the slot for today and reschedule him at another time, which we're very grateful of his flexibility. But we are going to be talking about some of those policy updates. Before we jump into the meeting, I want to let you all know that everyone on this call is going to be muted because of the large number of attendees in the meeting. We will have some time for questions and answers. I do encourage you to use the chat box. The entire PSA team is on this call today, so we'll all be monitoring the chat and we'll try to answer your questions as quickly as we can. We also may pause at the end. There should be a little button on your screen that allows you to raise your hand to ask a question. So we'll likely do the presentation and then we'll hold questions, verbal questions at the end where we can unmute individual lines. But I do encourage you to use that chat box and we'll try to attend to those very quickly. We are going to record this session and we'll send out all of the URLs, this PowerPoint, and any other relevant information in all of our listservs. So that includes both the educators call listserv as well as the regular PSA trainers and lead trainers listserv. So keep an eye out for that, as well as having this housed on our website after the call. I also wanted to mention that today's presentation will be given in English. We are going to do the same presentation this Thursday, March 26th from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern in Spanish. Dr. Laura Cuna Maldonado is going to be giving that presentation. There is a different Zoom meeting link. We'll send those out as well as a toll-free call number and meeting ID for Thursday's meeting, which will be conducted in Spanish.
Gretchen, do we want to pause and have Laura just repeat that in Spanish? If
Sure.
She's available to jump on. There she is.
Sí, ya. Sí, buenas tardes a todos. Nada más el seminario virtual en español se va a realizar el 26 de marzo, este jueves a las 2 de la tarde, tiempo del este. Vamos a revisar la política para realizar estas capacitaciones virtualmente a distancia. Entonces, este seminario se va a repetir el jueves. Gracias.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Okay, with that, Betsy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to be on the educators call today and to see so many folks on the call. We're going to start what has been, I'm sure, a rough couple of weeks for everyone with COVID-19. We're going to start this talk off with something that is fabulous for the PSA. And we're very excited to announce that we have a PSA Southeast Regional Extension Associate on board. His name is Tommy Saunders. I'm going to pause for a second and let him chime in and say hello if he's on the line.
Afternoon, everybody. Like Betsy said, I'm Tommy Saunders, and I'm the new PSA Southeast Regional Extension Associate. Like the slide says there, based out of the Richmond, Virginia area, previously working with Virginia Tech as a Food Safety Extension Associate. But I'm ready to get started and excited to eventually meet everybody, hopefully face-to-face sometime in the not too far distant future.
So Tommy started last week, which was great, right in the middle of the chaos. He has been reaching out to folks in his region, but I just want to extend a welcome to him and to let you all know that we are fully staffed up and have that position filled since Kristen left us. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to give you a little bit of a background about why we're doing this temporary remote delivery policy. We're going to go over the policy in detail, go over all the ins and outs, go over the new web form, ordering forms, options you have. So if you have questions as we go, again, put them in the chat box and we will try to address them. But what we're going to try to do today is really give you a very clear indication of what the new policy is, things you need to pay attention to, options for ordering books, and all sorts of other things that we've come up with in very short order to try and make the PSA training available to growers. We're going to then talk about the online PSA grower training course that we've been working on for a number of years that we finally piloted, and now we're fast tracking to launch to give growers that as an option and to give all of you that as an option to help with meeting the needs in your regions. And then we'll have a time for questions. But again, all during the presentation, if you have a question, please do, because next slide. All right. So as you all are aware, currently PSA grower training courses are only approved for in-person training courses. I am guessing, I know not every state has outlawed group meetings, but it looks like we are going that way. And so the issue is that we needed to come up with an option to allow growers to access courses during this COVID-19 outbreak. Got a call. I think the first email actually was an email from Lisa McKeague in Massachusetts, followed by a string of other emails from colleagues across the nation asking us what we were going to do about PSA grower training courses. So we built a new policy. It's a temporary policy. I want to stress that. You're going to see that multiple times throughout the call. One of the things that is of paramount importance to us, the reason we have only allowed in-person grower training courses is for several reasons. One, growers, when we did focus groups across the country, really wanted in-person trainings. Two, when you deliver stuff remotely, there are a lot of checks and balances you have to have into place to make sure that it's working effectively, which is why we spent so much time in the online course developing different activities to make sure people are getting the content. So our focus on developing this content or this policy has been on making sure that the growers are getting a high quality training, but that doesn't increase public health risks during this COVID-19 outbreak. So when you see all of the things in the next 45 minutes, I want you to understand that was the focus within the PSA team when we thought about this policy. Next slide. It is a temporary policy. I want to mention that. After the COVID-19 pandemic is over, this policy will be rescinded, okay? Right now, the policy is in effect until May 31st of 2020. Because so much is changing so quickly with the COVID-19 outbreak, if the COVID-19 outbreak extends 4 months, which is what it's currently looking at like, we will continue to extend this policy based on what CDC recommendations are. Okay, so right now it's May 31st, but if it stretches out, then we'll stretch it out. If we happen to get it under control sooner, which I don't see happening, we will adjust it. we absolutely reserve the right to revise or rescind this remote delivery option pretty much at any time. But if we find out individual trainers or groups of trainers are doing trainings that are not in the best interest of the participants, the technology's not working, they're not able to convey the information in a way that is effective for participants, we will rescind people's ability to do it this way. Okay, so the growers are of primary importance, and that they get this information in a way that's meaningful is important to us. How we're going to do this is, one of the ways we're going to do this is we're really going to look at evaluations. Like all the courses, you'll be required to turn in evaluations. I'm going to talk about that multiple times throughout the presentation, but I want to put that right up front, that again is a very important part of what we're doing here. Did I say it's temporary? Let me remind you, this is a temporary policy. Okay, so what you need to know now. In the announcement for this meeting, we sent the link to the policy. Most importantly, review the temporary policy. I realize it's multiple pages long, but part of the reason it's so long is we try to give you information to help you set up what you need to set up to make the remote delivery work for you. So that's one of the reasons the policy is so long. Courses that have already been approved by AFTO, and I believe there's something like 50 of them between now and the end of May. If you want to switch from an in-person to a remote, you can go to this link, and Gretchen's going to pause over, I think, to show you the form in a second. But you can go, and there's a button that will say, I want to switch my training to a remote delivery. Okay, how we did this is Rob set up and Michelle set up a new online registration form. Okay, so that will replace the form that you may have currently downloaded to your desktop. It's now an online form. So that online form allows us to give you a lot more options during this COVID-19 process, as well as in the future. So there's going to be options for you to switch your registration. There's going to be options for you when you register your new course to register a new course as a remote option. And we tried to make it as streamlined as possible. I'll pause here for a second and let Gretchen pop out to that form.
Yeah, Betsy, can you see my screen sharing right now?
There you are. Yep.
Okay, so for those of you who have registered courses in the past, you know that typically you would go to the AFTO website and click register a course, and you would normally click this link, PSA Produce Grower Registration link. When you click this link, it is now going to open up. It's basically going to pop you over to a form on our webpage. So if I click this, it's just going to pop open this form. So you will no longer use the paper version of the registration as you have in the past. Everything will go through this form. So do not submit any paper forms, registration forms to AFTO. What you'll see when you pop open this registration form is right at the very top, select your course delivery option. You have to select one of these three, and it's going to change some of the questions that you get. So for example, I'm requesting a traditional in-person training, which likely no one should be doing right now given the current outbreak, but you could request that, no remote delivery needed. The second option would be, I would like to register a new course for remote delivery. So this is something that you have never registered with AFTO before. This is a brand new course for remote delivery. You'll see that when I clicked that button, it pops up with all of our policies. And this is just to make sure that you as a trainer have read all of the remote delivery policies. So you'll scroll down and you'll click all of these buttons, and then you'll continue on to the form just as you have in the past. It's going to ask for the course registration primary contact, the information for their email. It'll ask you information about the course dates, the location, course availability, whether you want us to post it on the website. It's all the same. The only difference is that you're requesting a registration for a new course for remote delivery. The third option is the option where you've already registered a course. Let's say you registered a course with AFDO at the end of January or beginning of February. You were planning to host that course in end of March or early April. You already have a course ID from AFDO because you've registered the course. So that's where you would enter in that course ID and the dates of the training. You'll still have to go through and agree to the remote delivery checklist, but you'll notice that you don't get asked all of those additional questions in the registration form because you've already done that. So we're really just asking for another primary contact in case we have any questions about the remote delivery, but otherwise you're just agreeing to the remote delivery policies. You do not need to re-register the course. Again, if you have already registered a course and you have a course ID, do not re-register the course. Just enter the course ID that you have from AFDO, the date of the training, and then agree to the policies and put in a primary contact. And that is it.
Thank you, Gretchen. That was great. We can skip right past this because you did such a good job.
Yep, and we will send these PowerPoints out, which just have screenshots of what I just walked through there in case you need another walkthrough. So as I mentioned, there is a checklist which you'll agree to each one of these before it'll allow you to submit that form. And that basically is just a shortened format of the details of the policy. We still encourage you to go through and read the entire policy as well. So I'll turn it back over to Betsy.
Yeah, so thanks, Gretchen. That was really good. The checklist that she just showed you is what we're trying to do is reinforce some of the changes that have happened in the policy, as well as some of these standard established PSA grower training course policies that apply. So I want to go back over some of these. A lead trainer will need to be present the entire time. This trainer will now be allowed to be remote, but they need to be there the entire time. So that's the same. The registration of courses will go through AFDO, just the same. The form is new, but as Gretchen pointed out, same questions that you used to be asked on the registration form, just in a slightly different format so that we have flexibility for those that have already registered courses. They don't have to redo all of that information again. Printed manuals must be provided to each attendee. We've had a couple of questions about this, about have we considered going to an electronic document? What are we going to do about manuals? We came up with a couple of solutions, but right now, each participant must have a printed manual before the start of the course. We are looking into electronic options, but right now, as it stands, a printed manual must be provided. And again, I'm going to give you some options for that coming up. Course evaluations must be sent to each attendee. The attendees are going to have to fill those out and return them back to the trainer. And I'm going to go over this in more detail later, but right now we're still keeping with the paper evaluation forms. Are we looking at another option, electronic option? Yes, we are, but because the policy has come together so quickly, we're sticking with the paper evaluations for the time being. If that changes, we will let you know as soon as we make that change. But again, right now, paper evaluations. The attendee must be present for all the PSA course modules to receive a certificate of course completion. That is important, and you have to have somebody who's monitoring that. We'll talk about that in a little more detail. Multi-delivery is acceptable in the same way that you could do a PSA grower training over 2 days in person. You can do the training over 2 days or multiple days if you meet all the other requirements. Next slide there. Okay. So a little bit about ordering manuals. First of all, just as a reminder, for those of you that may not have ordered manuals in a while, the English grower training manuals are now spiral bound as well. Who knew this would come in handy for COVID-19 when we made that switch? But if you order manuals, they are now spiral bound. There are two shipping options. Traditionally, the one that is the normal one from ordering from the bookstore, you contact the bookstore sends you 30 manuals or 20 manuals or whatever you order. It goes out in a bulk order. For this COVID outbreak, we have set the bookstore up to fill orders for individual manuals shipped directly to your participants. Okay? There's a special order form for this, and we're going to walk through that in the next 2 slides. But for this thing, we have set up a system where you can send the bookstore 30 different addresses, and we will ship out 30 individual manuals to each of those participants. I do want to mention before we go to the next slide to show you some of that due to the university reduced staffing, there may be a little delay in getting those processed. But we are working to make sure that when orders come in, they can get filled and get out the door. And as you know, well, maybe you don't know across the country, but New York State has some significant shutdown in the amount of people allowed in workspaces. So this has taken a little bit of effort, but we think we're set up to handle this. Next slide, unless you want to pop out and show that order form, Gretchen. Here it is. Okay, so here's the remote delivery order form, and you go in here and you simply say you want to order these manuals. There is also a option if you're going to do that individual manual order. You will have to fill out a Excel file, which should be the next slide. Okay, so if you're going to order for your entire course, because you don't want to have 50 manuals shipped to you and you don't want to break up those 50 manuals, but you want the bookstore to do that, you'll fill this Excel spreadsheet out and you'll send it in, and the bookstore will do that. There is an increased cost for this. Instead of $50 a manual, it's $57 a manual to cover the shipping cost. And if your state has a tax, the state tax will be assigned. That will all have to be paid by the trainer. Okay, we don't want people we don't want you telling everybody, go order your own manual from the bookstore, because we won't know how to fulfill them to make sure entire courses are sent out at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second and see if we get any questions in the chat box about that, because I just want to make sure we're clear about this.
Don't see any questions about ordering.
Okay.
I did see a question from Jose asking, does this apply to international courses? And the answer is yes, it applies to all courses.
Well, except international courses, we will not be shipping manuals individually internationally.
Correct, yeah.
So the remote delivery applies, not the shipping part. I should also say that shipping outside of the continental United States, so that would be Alaska, Hawaii, all of our Commonwealth, and what the other word is escaping me. Those have increased shipping because of the expense of shipping to those locations. Territories and Commonwealths, there is an increased shipping cost for that. And we will not be doing this internationally because of customs and the trouble we have getting things through customs in a timely fashion.
There's also some questions related to, if you already have the manuals in stock, can you ship them directly to the participants?
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, if you already have the manuals in your office, you absolutely, those are your options. You ship them to them or you ask the bookstore to do it. We're absolutely fine with you shipping them. The key part is that every participant has to have a manual before the training. That's the key part.
Yep, and someone else asked about how much time does the bookstore need to know to guarantee delivery by the event date?
We typically say 3 weeks, I believe, on the website. So we're going to try to stick to that. I know in the short order, if you have one scheduled soon, that might be kind of tight, but we're going to stick to the 3 weeks. And if you know you need it sooner and it's a rush, let us know and we will see what we can do to make that happen. I think communicate with us is the key thing.
There's also a question about, do the participants have to be in the same geographic location?
No. So if you wanted to open a course up and you wanted people from New York, Pennsylvania, and Maine to be in the same training, you could do that. I would say though that where I would caution that is that if you're crossing time zones, that's going to be an issue. And I think it's also important to recognize that we do have a requirement that you be able to monitor that people are on that course and engaged.
Yep, and this might be getting a little bit ahead of things, Betsy. I know you're going to cover that here in the next couple slides. So maybe we move through the next
Let's
slides
go.
and then we'll
Yep.
pause again for some questions. I see there's a lot of questions in the chat box, and I just wanted to say that if you have a question, it's likely that somebody else has it as well. So if you message, please message everybody in the meeting, not just the panelists, because then we can answer the questions to everybody, because I recognize that we've been answering some of them, but people don't have the context of the question. So message all attendees rather than just panelists, if you think it might apply to multiple people, which likely it does.
Yep. We have no secrets here. Okay. So one of the options we are making available through the bookstore, so everybody has to get an evaluation. Let's use an example of the person who wrote in to the chat box that said, I already have my manuals. I want to send my manuals out to my participants. Super. In that case, the trainer who's sending the manuals out themselves would send the manual, but they would also have to remember to put a copy of the evaluation in with the manual. So their participant gets their manual, gets their evaluation. They should be printing the evaluation that AFDO sent them, so it has the course number right on the evaluation embedded, goes out to the participant. They do the training, the participant takes the training, fills the eval out, has to send it back to the trainer. In that case, you could submit a self-addressed stamped envelope to make it easier for the participant to send you back the evaluation. I think that'd be a very nice touch. But either way, the evaluation has to come back to you so you can bundle them and send them to AFDO. With the bookstore, if you task the bookstore, you say, I would like you to send 20 evaluations to these 20 manuals to these participants, we are giving you the option of saying, please put an evaluation in each of those manuals. So the bookstore will include an evaluation, a standard PSA evaluation. It will go to the participant with their book. They can take the training, fill the evaluation out, send it back to the trainer. But once these evaluations get back to the trainer, they will not have the course number on them because the ones we send out of the bookstore will be blank, right? Because we're not going to print out everybody's individual evaluation with the course number. We're just going to send a blank evaluation. So that is an option. And if you want to pursue that, you can see on the screen here, you just say, yep, please include that evaluation in the manual and we will take care of that for you. All right. Okay, next slide. Very important about the evaluation details and their importance. Again, all courses need to be evaluated. There's those two options for getting evaluations to participants. Either the trainer sends them, kind of like the manuals, or the bookstore can send a blank one. Again, they don't have the course number on them. So when you get them back from the participants as a trainer, you'll have to go through and make sure they each have the course number on it. Alternatively, you could start your training by having everybody pull the eval out and write the course number at the top. That's a good way to highlight the eval is there and a good way to get it stamped with the appropriate course number. Okay, so there's multiple ways to approach that. The participants will need to send them back to you as a trainer. You bundle them, send them back to AFDO. This is very important to us because we will be monitoring the evaluations to make sure these trainings are going okay. Again, there's a reason we didn't allow remote training in the beginning. We are doing this because of the outbreak, trying to give you guys an option to keep growers engaged in this process of meeting regulatory expectations. Next slide. Okay, new course policies specific to remote delivery. This is going to answer some of those questions that were in the chat box. So hopefully we can get this done. There are several options for doing remote delivery. One is entirely remote, kind of like the Zoom call you're on right now. To my knowledge, nobody is sitting next to anybody else. We are all remote, dialing into this one room. We anticipate that some places might do a hybrid where there's 3 or 4 people in a room and the rest of the people are remote. An example of this might be if you have a set of farmers who farm together, they may be together in a room logging in to this. Right now, we're not recommending sort of the hybrid because people are not supposed to be gathering, but I can envision there might be a case where you have not everybody entirely remote. The PSA lead trainer or trainers must provide clear and prominent language in the course advertisement that it's a remote course, as well as all of the technology that is needed for people to participate. Okay, you need to tell people you're going to have to be present for all the modules. We're going to have to be able to see you. So this means that people are going to have the technology where they can see them participating. And they're going to have to say that they're going to have to be there the whole time. So it's not like you can dial in and then start it and walk away and go do something else. Okay, so those things have to be made very clear with participants. Next slide. Okay, so what are these technology requirements? Oh, sorry, you went a little ahead. Participant attendance and, well, sorry. Did you go ahead or back? Are we good, Gretchen? Okay, I'm going to assume we're good. I'm going to go ahead with this one. Oh, hang on. So for the platform you can deliver this on, it has to be a way where people can do two-way video and audio. Why is this important? 1, so that people can see that people are present. 2, so that people can communicate and ask their questions. Okay? All participants have to have functioning video cameras, speakers, microphones, and or headsets if they need them. Certainly for presenters, it's helpful. At least one member of the training team must be comfortable handling and troubleshooting the web-based platform. I can tell you from all the trainings we've, or all of these Zoom meetings that we've done, we try to have people on there that can help troubleshoot some of the problems. If you're doing a training, and it's going to be a very long training, you need to make sure you have somebody there who can help, maybe even have a call-in number so people can call and walk through some of these. For the hybrid format, if you're going to allow people there to be a cluster of people, which again is not recommended, you really should have somebody on the ground to help with a cluster of people, especially if you're using something like a bigger TV or a bigger projection system to make sure people can see and hear. It would probably also take a conference call phone so people can hear from around the room, or a microphone where people can come up and ask their questions. The important part here is that the PSA lead trainer must be able to hear the presentations and all the questions, right? Because again, it comes down to having somebody who is capable of answering all of the questions that participants have. Next slide, please. All remote courses must appoint a course monitor to verify the participant engagement. What does this mean? It means taking attendance at the beginning of the course, making sure everybody who's supposed to be there is there. If you have a break, if you take a break for lunch, it means checking that after lunch, everybody's back online and present and engaged. There are some video functionalities that can be used to ensure that people are at their computers and looking. If you take any online courses, there's types of technologies that can monitor that you're looking only at your screen and not at the, not cheating on a test, for those of you who have done some online coursework. But the point is, we need to have somebody to verify that all the participants are there for the 7 modules, the same way we do in-person trainings. A training team can alternate serving as the course monitor, right? So if you have 2 trainers, a lead trainer or 2 lead trainers, and you're going to go back and forth doing the presentations, sure, when you're not presenting, you can be the person monitoring. We're not trying to make it more complicated, but somebody has to be monitoring participants. I think it's also important to monitor participants to see if they're having trouble or if they have questions. If their audio quits working, they might be waving at you through the video. Or, if their video quits working, they might be talking to you through the audio. So those are the important parts. And I can see a lot of chat going on in the boxes. I don't know if we want to stop there. Folks are talking about putting polls into presentations to engage people. There's lots of activities you can put into place to keep people engaged during the presentation. We're certainly working on a list of questions, clicker questions that you can use. But as we all transition here, there will definitely be more things that come out that help in this process.
Betsy, I did want to...
Betsy, this is Don.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Don.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, there were 2 related questions in the chat box. One of them said, sometimes when people have difficulty with their connections, it's best to freeze the video or to turn off the video. And the question was, can people check in and check out occasionally so as not to be continuously streaming the video? And then there was the question about polls. Could polling be used to monitor attentiveness and participation or presence as opposed to the video screen?
I have a lot of concerns. We hadn't actually thought about this, about people turning off their video to deal with bandwidth issues. If we can't monitor that people are there, we cannot verify their participation. I don't think you could have enough polls to be able to tell if people are there. I guess if somebody wants to give us data that says that's a good way to make sure people aren't disappearing, I can see polls being very effective to increase engagement. I don't think we should use polls to verify people are attending. We can certainly take those questions into consideration and see if we want to alter that. But at this point, I would not say that people turning off their video is acceptable. we have to have verification that they're there.
And I also wanted to say that we're getting a lot of great questions, and this is a very new policy for us, and you guys are bringing up very great questions in the chat box. So I know it's been a little bit hard to follow the thread because some of the questions were coming to panelists and we were responding to all participants, but after this call concludes, we'll put together an FAQ document from the questions that you all are entering into this chat so that everybody has the questions and the responses from the team.
Yep, and I also saw, and again, I haven't been monitoring it the whole time because I've been presenting, but I did see questions about evaluations in Qualtrics and why haven't we thought about Qualtrics and why don't we use Qualtrics. We are thinking about all of that and we're trying to make some assessment. And if we can come up with a solution, we will. We definitely thought about the whole scanning. Why can't people scan them? And right now that is not something that is being considered because of the variation in scanning would make it almost impossible for us to do that. But we are looking at solutions to having to send in paper evaluations. So if you bear with us, I promise we are looking into things and we will let you know if we come up with a solution. We recognize having people send in paper evals is to be a challenge, but such is all of the stuff we're dealing with COVID. So we are working on it, and we will let you know option that we think is viable.
Yep, and there's, can you hear me, Betsy?
I hear you, Gretchen.
Okay. Ironically, right as she was saying that, I got a notification on my internet that my internet was unstable. So that was interesting and very timely. But there was a couple easy questions that I think we can answer right now just when we're paused. There was a question about, can you do this remote delivery over multiple days? And the answer is yes, as long as you can verify the attendance at each one of those sessions. It's no different than the current in-person training delivery where you could, in theory, do one module a week over a series of 7 or 8 weeks. You just have to make sure that all participants would attend each one of those sessions in order to be able to receive the certificate from AFTO. And then there also is a question about maximum and minimum number of participants per class. We have not set that for the in-person courses either, but we encourage you to keep class sizes small just so that it's more manageable in terms of being able to interact with the participants, answer their questions through the chat box or through audio. You know, an ideal course size, I believe we said for in-person was somewhere around 25, but we are not limiting it. If you wanted to do a larger course, you could, but there, of course, come limitations with that in terms of the technology and actually being able to interact with the participants in the course. Okay, I'm continuing to collect these questions. So Betsy, why don't you continue on with this presentation and we will answer some questions at the end. And Betsy, I did just unmute your line, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Such, I'm having connection problems and fighting with my 18-year-old who wants to stream as well. So sorry about that. All good questions. I agree. I'm looking at the chat box and really do appreciate people's time to ask questions, and we will look at them and definitely post FAQs after the call. I don't want anybody to feel like we're out there stalking. I will say, when Gretchen just mentioned that thing about how many people you should have on a train, people So I would really recommend not jumping off and trying to set up something with 100 growers in it. I don't think that's going to be the best result for the grower. And I think for the trainers, that's going to be difficult as well. Best practices and suggestions for engagement. We talked a little bit about polls, but what we want you to do is select a web interface that you're familiar with and that you can conduct training or testing runs with the people that you're training with, certainly with the other trainers before you get on. But working with an interface that you're comfortable with, that you know how to troubleshoot, is definitely the best way to go about it. Designate a time at the beginning of the course for participants to practice being in the course. Practice raising your hand, practice muting and unmuting. Find out if there's something goofy about the web interface you're using. I was just doing a practice run on GoToMeeting, and it turns out I can put something in the chat box as a presenter, but the people listening can only use the question box. So if you don't practice ahead of time, you don't know.
Hey, Betsy, your audio is going in and out, so it might be best for you to connect via your phone. And I've received that message through the chat box from others as well.
Okay, hang on.
Okay, well, Betsy's trying to rejoin the meeting just because her audio was going a little bit in and out for me. I know others could hear her just fine, but it seemed like there was some issues with her bandwidth as well. She already mentioned that setting up a practice session is always a good thing to do, especially if you're working with a crowd of people who have not previously used web-based technology. So raising hands, muting and unmuting. She mentioned the sensitive to privacy concerns, just in terms of people are going to be in their homes and potentially on video with their children running around. So you just have to be sensitive to those facts. I saw someone else in the chat box mention that making sure that you keep those links private and only send the links to the meeting to the individuals who are to be attending the meeting. You may want to actually create a registration with a login to prevent spreading or sharing information that may not be appropriate for sharing during the meeting. As you know, in the Zoom meeting, sometimes you can share your screen. You may want to disable that on your participants' end so that you don't see something that you don't want to see. Those are some things just to think about in terms of best practices for web deliveries. There are additional suggestions in the policy document that you can read through, and we'll likely be sharing some additional resources going forward for appropriate web technology and delivery. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is just please don't hesitate to contact any of the PSA team if you have questions. We are here to help in any way that we can. Connie is actually going to be hosting office hours every Thursday through April 30th from 12 noon Eastern time, which is also 9 a.m. Pacific, on Cornell Zoom. And she's going to be practicing and allowing folks to join the room and practice using Zoom as a platform and going over some tips if anyone is interested in using that service, and help is available.
Hey there, can you guys hear me?
Yes, but there is feedback. So hang up on your phone.
There you
if you
go.
are.
Wait. Yep, I'm sorry. I dialed in, but you can't see me anyway. So hopefully this will be okay. The important part about this question and support slide, one, reach out to the people in your region. We are here to help. We are focusing our attention on getting this done. Two, those Zoom practice hours to help you get set up. The other thing I just want to say is if you can't make the Zoom hours and you need help, just reach out to us. We will do whatever we can with the time we have to help you get this done. Can you still all hear me okay, or is there still
Yes.
a connection? Okay.
Nope, I can hear you.
Great, thank you, and sorry for that disruption. Next slide. Okay, I know we were joking about it earlier. This policy is temporary. I will say though, it will go on as long as the COVID does. So there you go. The thing we wanted to end with or talk about before we ended was the PSA online grower training course. The pilot ended March 3rd. It went well. There was a lot of very significant feedback. It was good feedback. We feel confident in the course. I will say we also are making changes to the course because some of the activities were a little too robust for participants. They took up a little too much time. So we're trying to reframe some of those to make those a little bit more streamlined. We are fast tracking the launch of this course. What does that mean? That means that we are working very hard to get all of those edits into the course, work with eCornell to get the site launched. And we are also signing ourselves up to deliver the course, one starting every week beginning in April. Okay, initially, they're a 3-week course. So if one starts April 8th, it runs for 3 weeks. And then we'll start another one on the 15th that'll run for 3 weeks. Then we'll start another one on the 22nd that'll run for 3 weeks. Initially, we will cap these at 20 participants, see how it goes, then raise the registration to make sure the instructors are capable of handling that many participants. We will announce the registration on the PSA website. The course is very text heavy because we have to cover all of the content that we cover in the manuals. The course comes with a paper manual. So if you participate in the course, someone will ship a paper manual to you. Okay, so participants get a paper manual. Participants are also eligible for a certificate, an AFTO certificate, just like participants in the in-person course. It's online, so people have to be able to handle that technology. There are 6 required discussions. That means that you have to, if you're a participant, you have to turn in these homeworks, if you will, that are graded against a standard rubric. Okay? There is a PSA lead trainer that facilitates the course, so it is facilitator led. There is an instructor there all the time. And those discussions are scored by the lead trainer to confirm that engagement in the course. I mentioned this a little earlier in the sense of how you structure online learning. Right now, we're anticipating that participants will have to spend about 10 hours per week to get through the course. So somewhere between 20 to 30 hours of total effort to make it through the 3-week course. Now, an in-person course is only 7 hours of dedicated instruction, so this is longer than that. But there's other takeaways in that people get to engage with the information. They have to fill out those discussions. So that's a good thing. Participants work at their own pace, right? So they can sign up and they just have to do all the work over a 3-week period of time. Initially, when we talked about this in previous educators calls or previous discussions that we've had about it, we had initially said that we anticipated the cost to be about $400 or $500. And there's reasons for that. The cost of the course, the cost of the books, the cost of the certificates, the cost of an instructor. Because of this outbreak, PSA is doing all of the instructing in-house. And so we think we can get the cost down to about $150 with the hosting costs from eCornell, a book, and a certificate, right? So we're going to try and get it down to as little as we can, all right, for this outbreak, just to make this a viable option for people. I also intend to send a note to some states who have CAP grants, which is why the states have been able to offer reduced cost of training, right? The trainings that we hold in New York, I'll use us as an example. Our State Department of Ag pays for the books, pays for the certificates. that allows us to do a training for 25 to 50 bucks because we're only covering food and room rental or whatever that is. So I'm hoping to work with maybe states or other organizations that might be able to reimburse the growers if they pay it, or reimburse them for part of it. I can't say if that's going to happen. Again, the policy is so new, we don't know what our options are. But what I'm telling you is that we're going to look for options to try and reduce the cost of some of these expenses. Next slide. Okay, I did want to mention some additional resources that are available, and I should have put the other one up here that I should have put up here is some of those fact sheets that are out of North Carolina State as well. Sorry, that slipped my brain. One is the Institute for Food Safety at Cornell University, food industry resources. There's FAQs, there's links to things that are going on. If you're looking for, FAQs that are updated every day, that's a good place to go. Extension response to COVID-19 and resources for extension professionals working online is available at this link. I do want to say, and I forgot to mention it because it's when I got booted out audio-wise, we are also working on a best practices fact sheet, if you will, for helping people log into Zoom, so sort of a user's manual for participants, and we will have that posted in the next day or so. Connie will certainly have it at her first office hours on Thursday, but we'll get that online as well as soon as we can. Next slide. Okay, are there any questions? Let's start with these.
There are lots of them, but what I would like
Okay.
to do is, I see two people have their hand raised, and I'd like to go to those individuals first because they were raised at the beginning. I'm not sure whether they still have questions, but I'm going to start with Dr. Paul PV. I have just unmuted your line, so if you still have your question, go ahead and ask. And I believe you will need to unmute it on your end as well, Dr. Paul PV.
Gretchen, in the chat box, Dr. Paul had asked about whether it was okay to stream pre-recorded video of the lectures in the online course, or I'm sorry, in the remote delivery course. And in the chat box, we responded no, that pre-recorded, that the delivery must be live.
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna move to Hans. Hans, go ahead. I think you're gonna have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
You're a little bit distant, but.
Oh, maybe it would help if I put my mic in front of my mouth.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Much better.
Okay, well, I mean, thanks for putting this all together. And I think it's a huge lift and it's great. So I want to say that first. And having done, online classes and just finished a 3-part one, I actually have never experienced a time when some of the participants did not have bandwidth issues or some kind of an issue where they had to call in or their video wasn't working. So I can see the video thing working in theory. I just really feel like we need to have a contingency plan for when it doesn't, because I almost guarantee that's going to happen despite all the good intentions, and it would be a shame to not be able to give someone that attendance given that they were having bandwidth issues. So I'll unmute myself, or I'll mute myself. But that's my major question right now. Is I think this can work. I just think we need to talk through or come up with some kind of contingency plan for that.
Hi, Hans. Thanks. This is Betsy. Thanks for that comment. We can talk internally about if we think there's a way to handle that and what the contingency would be. My concern is that if they're having bandwidth problems, that it would also impact whether or not they could see the presentations as well. And although you could say next slide so they know you've moved to the next slide, I know exactly what you're saying. I'm not sure we've thought about those contingency plans. So I can tell you we'll think about those contingency plans, but go with the policy as it's written right now and think about it some more. And I'm absolutely happy to take your ideas if you have them as a contingency plan. Let me say that to everybody. We're happy to accept input, that's for certain. Gretchen mentioned this a few minutes ago. This is brand new, and we've been scrambling to get a lot of the forms in place and figure this out on our end. So we're absolutely open. We're absolutely open to ideas.
Okay, I'm gonna move to the next question here. Looks like Beth Claypool, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with that. It's the same thing. Every time I've done a webinar, there's always bandwidth problems. So I'm almost wondering that we're going to have to be, I think one of the limiting factors for this is going to be the number of people you can have participate. So, and that's including instructors. So I think, you know, we have to have a maximum of 2 or 3 instructors and then maybe 10 students at a time, because you will always have bandwidth problems. And that's, I would totally agree with that. You always do. So that's definitely a thing to think about. I think the limiting factor is going to be number of participants.
Thanks, Beth. And I know, I mean, I'll use today as a perfect example. I mean, I'm in my house, my son has class, he's streaming class, I'm streaming this. It's not only just the bandwidth of wherever we're going, it's the how many you got in your house doing it, right? So it's going to be an issue.
Yeah, and quite a few people are also recommending, you know, scheduling a separate practice session even before the actual training, and or building in some time on the agenda to, you know, just address IT issues right up front on the agenda. I think that's a great addition, Rob.
Yeah. We definitely mentioned that in the policy. We give you a few ideas of how to do it before, after. I mean, not after, but before the training or at the very beginning of the training. Doing it after is not very functional.
Yep. I also saw some questions in there, and I think we'll need to follow up with our colleagues at the regional centers, but there's been some questions about doing the pre and the post test from the Southern Center. That's not necessarily a PSA product, so I think we'll need to follow up with our Southern Center colleagues, or maybe someone is on the line about how they would like to handle pre and post tests. But we will add that to our FAQ document. And like I said, there are a lot of questions in the chat box, which I know the PSA team has tried to address, but we'll collect all these and send them out in an email to everybody after this meeting concludes.
Gretchen, I see a question. I may have missed this, sorry. When can we start delivering the trainings? We are working with AFTO to get this live on their site. Everything on our end will be live this afternoon and ready to go. So the question will become, you need to change the delivery from in-person to remote, and you need to give AFTO a time to approve that. So I would say a couple of weeks is what it normally takes AFTO to approve. You need to make sure all your people get delivered a manual and an evaluation form. And if you have those 2 things set up, all your technology in place, all your trainers in place, then you should be able to start delivering the training.
Yep, and I see a message from Caitlin Stahl from the Southern Center. She says that they're going to discuss this on their end and share more information as soon as they can.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Okay, trying to scroll back through here. If there's other questions, you can raise your hand and I'm happy to unmute you. And the PSA team, if there have been questions that you fielded that you'd like to bring up, feel free to unmute your lines and ask those questions.
In the policy, you'll notice that there are suggestions for activities. I see Annalisa was suggesting trying to put in a compilation or ideas for each of the modules. That's something we can work on. We have put together some ideas in general for engaging during the remote delivery, but we'll work on that further.
Hey, this is Donna. I wanted to address a question that popped up into the Q&A. What is the long-term validity for remote trainees that participate? Will there be some sort of in-person follow-up that's necessary down the line? And I believe this question is asking about the validity of the grower training certificate that the grower participants will receive. So I just wanted to clarify that when they receive the certificate, it will be the normal PSA AFTO certificate. So it's a one and done training, meaning that there's going to be no requirement to retrain down in the future.
Right, right. This is why we're making the requirement that you be able to see them, that we know they're engaged, to try and make it the same requirement as the in-person. Again, taking into account Hans' request that we think about, okay, what happens when bandwidth becomes an issue? Same with Beth Claypool, but it will be, they will get an AFTO certificate like a normal in-person training.
Okay, I see a question, hand up from Badrinath. So Badrinath, you are unmuted. You'll have to unmute your own line though. Okay, there you go. You were just unmuted just a second ago. Okay. Not hearing anything from that line. And recognizing we are 10 minutes over the hour. Betsy, are there additional questions we want to address? I know at the beginning of this call, there were a whole bunch of questions about evaluations and why we're not doing an online survey for the evaluations. Do we want to talk about that?
I've mentioned it a few times during the presentation, but I'll go over it again. We are looking for possibilities, perhaps a Qualtrics, perhaps other ways of tackling this. Right now, we are going with paper. We are not moving towards scanning because of the variation in scanning we really think is not going to be viable for scanning these in. We are looking at some online options. As we have more time to think about those possibilities, we will follow up with you and let you know what happens. We will tell you at some point if we decide not to do it, why not, but we are looking into those possibilities. But for right now, it's paper evaluations, and you need to do it that way. Is that good, Gretchen, or do you want me to clarify anything more?
Nope, that was good. I just thought we should return to that because I know there were a flurry of questions right at the beginning about that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that
All
the
right.
PSA team wants to bring up that might not have been addressed yet? I've been trying my best to stay up in the chat box, but inevitably I've probably missed some, and I know that you all have tried answering as many as possible. So anything from the PSA team that hasn't been addressed yet?
I think there were just two things that I noticed. Patrick had pointed out, and unfortunately it's true, that meeting the needs of plain growers is going to continue to be a challenge even with this sort of policy without the ability to be electronic. I don't know what we can do other than be in person for growers who don't access technology. And then the other question was the PSA online course. Will it be first come, first served? And the answer is yes. We're hoping to be able to reach at least 100 growers during the month that we are fast tracking the PSA grower training online and more in following months.
Right. I think too with the plain grower community, this was another community that I think may still do small group meetings. But yeah, it is going to be a challenge for certain communities like that, for sure. And for some of these isolated communities, outside people going into the isolated communities probably exposes them a little more. But yeah, definitely a concern and one I've certainly thought about.
Okay, I see, and Annette had her hand raised. So Annette, go ahead. I've just unmute your line, so you should have the ability. There you go.
Thanks for all your work on this, guys. Regarding the evaluations, it seems like if we don't have an electronic option, we're either not going to get true feedback because they're not going to feel like they can speak freely if they know it's coming back to the trainer, and it could potentially be tracked to them, because if we don't track it, how do we know that we're getting them all back?
Oh, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. It becomes not anonymous if they're sending you an envelope with their name on it. I think a self-addressed stamped envelope is the way to go, because then they don't necessarily have to put their return address on it. I know for you, then you can't track it, which is a problem. Let me think through that, Annette. Can I think through that and we can post a note in our FAQs?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, there might be, we might, let me think about this. I have a few ideas, but I don't want to say them out loud lest somebody on the team get really mad at me for speaking without asking first. I have a few ideas.
Yep, I think we'll address this. We'll get off this call and talk about some of these policies. These are all really great points that you know, until people bring them up, we haven't accounted for every single circumstance that may appear. So
Gretchen can see me volunteering us already, and she's nervous. But it's a great question, Annette, and I appreciate you bringing it up because I had not thought about that. So that is a fabulous question.
And I did see Rob was addressing something to everybody in the chat box, but I thought it was worth mentioning. A couple people had questions that they canceled their current course due to the current circumstances. So if you've already canceled your course, then please do re-register the course. So again, going back to, let me pop back over to here. Whoops, sorry. If you have canceled a course, then you need to re-register a new, you would register a new course. So if you've gone ahead and canceled your course because you decided not to host it in person with AFTO, then you will need to register a new course for remote delivery. And I thought I heard Tommy was about to say something, or someone on the PSA team was about to chime in, and then I talked right over them.
Yes, if I have 1 minute, I just wanted to bring up Oscar's question. He was asking, he's thinking about providing a course for attendance in Mexico and in the US, and the challenges of offering the materials for those that are located in Mexico. What I just wanted to mention that usually lead trainers in Mexico, what they do is they will either purchase the manuals from the bookstore, and then they will ship to the attendants directly, or they will find a place in Mexico where they can print the materials and then they deliver to the attendants. So that's we really don't have a printing service in Mexico that we know of or that we will recommend. So that is the situation right now.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Laura. Okay. All right. Like I said, we will compile all of these questions. We'll send out another email with these FAQs because there were so many great points that were brought up on this call. This was our normal educators meeting time, recognizing that we did bump Hans off the schedule. I will talk to Hans after this call and see if we can try to reschedule that webinar for Module 7. But as always, we're open to other ideas for this particular meeting. So if you have a topic that you'd like to discuss, maybe we do one on COVID-19 and produce resources, just throwing that out there. In the near future, please send them on to me. My email is glw53@cornell.edu. And keep an eye out on all of our listservs. We'll be communicating all of our policy updates to the educators group, as well as the PSA trainers and lead trainers listserv. And then Connie always does a great job keeping our social media streams up to date, if that's how you prefer to get your information. So do stay on top of any emails from us, as this is a currently evolving situation. We're trying to address things as quickly as we can to make these courses accessible.
Right.
So Betsy, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I do just want to really thank everyone for their time today. I know a few people have dropped off, but cannot thank you enough for your time, getting on the call, making suggestions, sending in comments. As Gretchen again mentioned earlier, we've really been working on this policy, and within the team, we've bounced it back and forth. But again, today you guys brought up some things we had not thought about or had not really considered. All of that is extremely valuable to us, and we will work to address all of those, think those through, and get you a response so you know what our thinking is. I see Gretchen just put up the PSA website. Again, for those of you in the Southeast who want to know how to reach Tommy, you can find him on our website. He is there. He does not have a phone yet, but he does have email. So feel free to reach out to him and ask him questions if he's your regional guy. And other than that, I want to say a huge thank you to the PSA team. Everybody has been working a lot on this material, trying to come up with ways to help you all, trying to make sure the policy is clear, adding in all those resources, getting things online, making sure all the forms work, interfacing with the bookstore. So cannot say enough about the PSA team and the work they've put in. So with that, thank all of you. Thanks to the PSA team. Stay safe out there, stay away from people, wash your hands, and hopefully we'll all make through this and flatten the curve as best we can.
Yep, and one final reminder that Laura will be doing this presentation in Spanish on Thursday, March 26th from 2 to 3 p.m. and hopefully we'll have some of those FAQs answered by that meeting time, but we'll circulate those through the listservs either way.
For sure. Thanks for going back to that, Gretchen. Good call.
Yep. All right, thanks everybody, and I'm sure we'll be talking with a lot of you very soon. Take care.